Welcome to the Grazing Grass Podcast, episode 70.
I think a big thing is just getting pride out of the way and willing to listen to other people. I think having partners is really good for that. I think having mentors is really good for that because we all have things in our operation that we don't like talking about. And if somebody tells you they don't, they're lying to you.
You're listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, helping grass farmers learn from grass farmers. And every episode features a grass farmer and their operation. I'm your host, Cal Hardage. Imagine a world where ranching nurtures our earth. Welcome to the vision of the Noble Research Institute. This nonprofit champions regenerative agriculture, turning research into practical solutions for farmers and ranchers. On their 14,000 acres of working ranches, they showcase principles that enhance soil health, boost grazing productivity, and uplift the entire ecosystem. Excitingly, they've just launched Essentials of Regenerative Ranching, a hands-on course for those eager to pioneer change in agriculture. And keep your ear open for an upcoming grazing class this fall. For a sustainable future in ranching, turn to Noble Research Institute. Learn more about them on their website at noble.org. That's NOBLE.org. On today's episode, we have Michael Vance of Souther Reds. He is operating on 100% leased land and grass genetics. I think we have an excellent show for you today, and you're going to enjoy it. First, before we get to it, 10 seconds about my farm. You know, I hate to say it again, but it's still kind of hot here. I plan on planting a few cool seasons. Last year, we had a drill. It's not a pasture drill, but a old drill we used, and I used it to plant some. I had varying results, partly because it was just so dry. This year, we're coming into this part of the year in much better shape. Thinking about just broadcasting some and seeing if I can get the cattle to improve the contact with the soil so they'll sprout. Jump over to the Grazing Grass community. Let me know what you do. And before we talk to Michael, let's jump into a review. The review of the week is from Great089, and they said, I keep coming back and stop here first. This is the one podcast I keep coming back to first when searching for something to listen to or learn. They have great diversification of interviewees, so many little bits of knowledge, and great hearing the different perspectives. Well, Great089, thank you for leaving us a review. And if you've not left us a review, we'd appreciate it if you would. It helps get the word out about our podcast. That's enough of that. Let's get to why you're here. Let's talk to Michael. Michael, we want to welcome you to the Grazing Grass Podcast. We're excited to have you on here.
I'm excited to join in. I don't get to do these very often, and so I hope I'm able to contribute something. I know I've got quite a few friends that listen in, and that some of them even somehow knew that this was coming up maybe, and so they're even excited to listen once this hits. And so I hope I'm able to drop some things that are helpful to other producers because, you know, we're all in this together and learning from each other. And so I look forward to, you know, maybe giving a little bit of my insight that'll contribute to other people.
Wonderful. That sounds great. Michael, let's just start out. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your operation.
My wife and I, we have 3 kids. We've got currently in a kind of a different operation. We've got 2 partners. One of our partners is largely into him and his wife are largely into cattle. That's Cooper and Katie Hurst, and they're based out of South Mississippi. And then we got another partner, Jonathan Batarza, and his wife, and they bring more of a business mindset and help us with the financial side. But both very much they're financially contributing, and then they also contribute in a managerial way to our operation. And so we're blessed with having a good relationship of, you know, partners. And then we run a grass-based operation. We try to be 100% forage, and we run on 100% lease land. I originally started without anything. We didn't have any inherited land, any inherited equipment. And so naturally, before it was even probably popular, we had to learn how to be low resource, low input operators. And so we've always had to think outside the box. over time, we built up a seed stock Red Angus operation. We've been really hammering away at that for a little over a decade now. And we've got commercial cattle, and we raise some replacement heifers based on grass. And then currently we're doing some crossbreeding, some kind of neat composite stuff, for here in the subtropical climates. But mainly our deal is about enterprises and about raising cattle on grass, low input, low resource, and try to really think about things outside the box from a business perspective. It's been kind of a long time getting to where we are now. And we are based in Texas. We lease ranches on the north part of Texas, the east part of Texas, and the central part of Texas. And currently we've got 3 pretty sizable operations. And so we're kind of spread out. We don't have very much labor, as in not almost none, a little bit of part-time help. And we hire some day help when we need it. And so we're busy, but we're blessed. We are very much blessed with good landowner partners that I think are key in this business. And we're very much blessed with key cattle enterprise partners as well. And just so thankful for those opportunities.
Wonderful. It does sound like you have a lot going on there. Now, you mentioned you didn't come from a farm background?
No, I did come back from a farm background, but we didn't inherit any land or equipment or anything. So we grew up farming, had some cattle and stuff, but my dad passed away actually when I was in high school. And so that kind of lost the link in the chain, so to speak. And there were 3 of us brothers, and we pretty much had to, what little we had to sell out at that time, or as he was getting sick. But that instilled in me the want to get back in it at some point. And so even starting in college, we got blessed with opportunities to work for some pretty innovative people, and have just been, really blessed with opportunities along the way. And, good Lord's been good to us and giving us opportunities to continue to do this and giving us a passion for it. So.
Oh, very nice. Now, I think you mentioned you were grad school at OSU?
Yeah. So, I got an undergrad in animal science and ag economics from Mississippi State. And then after a few years of working on ranches, I realized that I really want to learn more about business and really handling the financial side. And so I went back to the Spear School of Business there at Oklahoma State, where they allow you to do some things. I actually did most of that on the ranch, and it was a great program to go through and to really learn the business side and things that I would say that I probably apply more so than some of the other things that I may have learned in undergrad,
So how'd you get started once you got out of college? You were working on ranches up here.
I probably got my first start I had opportunity to partner with some guys and buy some recip cows and put I guess it was some guys that were doing some show cattle and some bucking stock. They needed cows to put embryos in. And I was looking for an opportunity, and luckily there was a banker that believed in me, and I bought a potload of cows and put embryos in them, and I was able to flip those with the embryos in them to the owners of the embryo and sell the calf off. A lot of people at that time were probably buying more cell-born open cows and putting embryos in. And at that time, pairs were pretty cheap. I bought pairs and put the embryos in them, and I made an agreement to where I could keep that cow until she weaned off the calf, and then I'd sell them the cow with their embryo in it. And I saw some inefficiencies in it, and I was working with a reproduction company and was able to partner with them a little bit on it. And kind of it started there. I had other opportunities to kind of partner with people that had leases and different things, and I even started my seed stock operation. I was able to partner with a family that I'm still real close with. They let me put some embryos in their cattle, and that got us our first Red Angus seed stock cattle on the ground. And I just took advantage of whatever opportunities we had at the time, and then had opportunity to come down here to Texas and manage a ranch for 2 brothers, and they gave me opportunity to partner with them, kind of grew with them for a little while, and then eventually bought out the partnership with them, and that's where we are today. But along the way, we've just been blessed with good relationships that we still have and we still carry on, and good people, but just different things. Life happens, and different ups and downs, and you get opportunities to move or change or whatever. And so now we're in this phase where we're leasing ranches. We've been pretty steady. I guess the last 3 or 4 years we've been kind of doing the same thing, and kind of seems like we've really become a lot more sustainable with our model and our current business model. And it seems like it's something that I think we're going to stick with as long as we're able to.
When you got those first seed stock, were you thinking at the time 100% forage? We're going grass-based?
Yeah, actually, at that time, we were already grass-based. That was the reason. That's a good question, because that was the reason we actually went and got the genetics. We found some genetics we liked up north, and we knew they needed to be acclimated to the south. And we knew they were the right body type type for forage. They were moderate cattle, had big guts on them, a lot of rib shape. Those cows would hustle during the winter, but we really needed to adapt them to this country, to this higher moisture grass. And we knew there were some things that, we would have to just kind of, kind of let Mother Nature have her way with them and, really put some pressure on them. And that's what we did. I think the first calves were born in 2012. We wanted to be grass from the get-go. I mean, that was the whole point, was to, we look around the country and there's just not very many really good truly grass operators. Everybody claims to be a grass operator. Everybody claims their bulls are forage efficient bulls, but when you really filter through, there's not very many. And it's disappointing, honestly, because there's a lot of times I chase rabbits and I come to find out, well, that guy's feeding as much as the next guy is. He's just trying to hide it. And what we found was there's just not very many genetics that look good on just pure forage, especially if you're making them graze some pretty tough forage at different times of the year. And so, that was something that we thought, over time I've gotten some confidence in doing. It took a little bit to get there. You had to be a good grass manager and you really had to get your genetics at work. And so it took a few years before we had very many good ones. And then it seemed like every year we had a few more good ones. And then now it seems like, the percentage that we're keeping back and the percentage that are staying true to the end is just getting more and more so. And I think it really helps, and I think a lot of people in our circle have this mindset. We're not looking for a great bull. Everybody's looking for that next great one. In the seed stock business, 90% of guys are looking for that next great. To be honest about it, there ain't many great bulls. There's not meant to be many great bulls. I want to, I tell people for myself, I want 100 bulls that all look alike and that breed the same and that breed consistency. And when we started realizing that, we're like, we don't want a great one. We want 100 really good ones that are just consistent, uniform, don't have issues. And when we realize that, we want it just like a guy wants his steer calves or just like a guy wants his heifer calves. That one great one is just the top side of an hourglass distribution, so to speak. And he's going to breed average. Most of the time he's going to breed average. And so we want our breed average to be really good. Cause I want, like this past year at our bull sale, we'd have guys show up and we knew their budgets were small. They'd tell us, hey, I don't know if I'm going to get a good bull balk. I don't know if I'm going to get a bull balk. My budget's kind of small. I'm like, man, if you really look through there's a lot of good bulls out there. If you sit here long enough, you're going to find a bull in your price range, and he's probably going to breed the same as the ones that are above your price range, and that's not probably the right thing to say as a guy that sells bulls, but we're into raising consistency. And, I tell everybody I want our bull sale to average to stay small. I just want to, raise more of them. And that's kind of where we're going to be. We're honestly in this business, people can't afford to, when I see bull sale averages that are 7, 8, 9,000, it doesn't even make any sense to me, because the average commercial man can't justify that. And honestly, the average bull that's getting sold for that, he's not worth that. And so I want my bulls to be profitable for the guy that's buying them. If they're not, we're not going to be sustainable, and we're not doing anything to help anybody. We might as well cut all their nuts and make steers out of them, because, we're in this to be profitable. But the only reason we do the bull deal is to help spread genetics. And what I tell people is we're selling hope. We're giving guys a chance to improve their program. And if we can't do that, we need to quit and go do something else, in my opinion. And if we ever get to the point where we feel like we're not adding value, we will quit, because that's what keeps us driving at the end of the day,
And on your bull sale, before I jump back to the other question, you had a bull sale in April of this year. Was that your first one? And what's your plan for the future on bull sales?
So that was our second sale, and we actually had a few heifers this year. Yeah, and it's kind of a tough time. This year was really tough for us because we're all still in pretty heavy drought, and herds are majorly reduced. So we had a lot of current customers that didn't come by this year because they've got the bull battery they need, and they've got reduced herd sizes, so they need less bulls. And if your bulls hold up, they're going to last a long time, and they're not going to. You guys aren't going to need to buy every year, and so we've kind of hit a little bit of a lull, that's okay. But our current plan is to have another bull sale next spring. The only reason we wouldn't is because we are in this transition to a new ranch, and actually we want the bull sale to be at the new ranch. And if we have a hiccup along the way trying to get set up over there, we will have a plan B. But currently we are planning on having a bull sale next April. And the reason we have a sale a little bit later than a lot of people, because we do raise the bulls 100% on forage. And when I say forage, I want that to be a green root. There are drought times where we'll have to hay them or something. We did a few years ago. We really don't want to do that. That's not the way we operate. And even if we do that, we're not going to give them enough hay they're never just going to be standing a lot eating hay. We just don't do that. We would just not have a sale before we did that. So that would be the only thing that could give us a hiccup, is if we continue into drought and we have some hiccups on this transition. But as of right now, we think we have a somewhat of a pretty good plan to have a bull sale there next year. And that's going to be south of Palestine, Texas, in the kind of east central part of Texas is where we'll have that sale currently.
And for your sale and for your seed stock you got started with, you went with all red Angus?
Correct. So we started red Angus. Right now we do have some pretty solid South Pole red Angus composites, and they're actually double registered because they're out of registered seed stock from both sides. We're not just crossing them with some commercial cows, and I think there's some value to that. But the other thing that we're playing with a little bit, there's two other breeds that we really think add some value for grass producers. One is Murray Gray. We raised a few pretty sharp Murray Gray cattle, and Murray Gray red Angus cross cattle. The Murray Gray cattle are probably the best marbling cattle on forage that I know exists, at least in this part of the world. I mean, to me, they're the top tier in terms of marbling ability. They're just some old school cattle, old short faces, moderate, good rib on them. Cows have good little udders on them. And so we really like those cattle. We think they add some things. They're almost like a terminal cross for the grass-fed operator, but they do have enough maternal in them to really do the things that guy can keep some really sharp females, some kind of smoky females. We got some really cool looking females out of that cross. And the other one that we're really excited about, that we're just now really getting some calves big enough to wean out of, is we've got some really nice Beefmaster cows we've been crossing with our Red Bulls, and they're more of a moderate Beefmaster, low milk Beefmaster, and we really like what we're seeing so far. There's a lot of heterosis there, and so that'll fool some people. I think they'll probably even look a little better than what they really breed, but I think for the subtropical climate that we see here in Texas and Louisiana, Mississippi, we think that cross will do some things, especially for a guy that's got maybe a little bit too much English, and maybe a bull like that, a half blood, half Beefmaster, a bull that really is about an eighth ear. We think that bull may have something to really create some females for this environment. And so we're looking at that. The other thing that we like the Centipoles, just can't really find any good ones that we can get our hands on, but we have a mentality that we believe there's good cattle in every breed. If people start getting hung up on breeds with me, I kind of tune them out, because there really are good cattle in every breed. And I don't even care about color. Like, we've had really good Brangus cattle. We've still got some really good Angus cattle. We'll have a few black bulls every year. We just like good cattle. And so now that we really got our red Angus where we want them, we're the last thing we're really trying to critique on them is we want to get them slick, and I mean slick, like look like a Centipole slick. And we're getting there. And then the other thing is just, it's kind of a constant critique on udders. Like, I want perfect udders, and it seems like you never get them quite perfect. We've got them going the right direction though. But as we continue to do that, now we're kind of looking at we've got them where we kind of want them. Now they're good enough to cross with some other cattle and kind of upsize them in our mind. And so for that guy that likes our red Angus, but maybe wants a touch of ear, or maybe wants a touch of that South Pole, we've got quite a few customers that like the South Pole, but maybe don't have enough confidence in using them as a full blood, or maybe they're going to feed them in a feedlot and they don't have enough data to know how those cattle are going to perform. And so we create that half blood for them. And that way they can kind of step their foot in water a little bit and not have a drastic change in calf crop. And we've actually seen some really good things out of that cross in terms of the value they bring on a grass carcass in a grass finishing operation. We've seen some value in that red Angus South Pole cross as opposed to maybe a purebred. So just something we're kind of watching with some of our customers and stuff, and kind of getting feedback from. And so, if a customer ever calls me, now I've gotten to the point where I got quite a few customers. I can just say, hey, call this guy because he's doing that, and he can give you some real world data.
Oh yes, and very interesting with the different breeds. I'm a breeds guy. I love all the different breeds and learning about them. So it's interesting. I was wondering what that fourth breed was going to be, Beefmaster. We just got through using some Beefmasters on my dad's herd. And then the Murray Gray is interesting to me. I've seen only like 2 or 3 cows in the wild, but I hear them talked up so much. I'd love to see some more.
I've got a good friend down here in McKinney, Texas, that has a meat market, and then he also has a really good barbecue joint. And I kind of learned from him, and I'll throw his name out there. His name's Matt Hamilton. He may not like it, but he'll be all right with it. I kind of learned about the Murray Grey early on from him. We were actually harvesting some cattle at his processing facility that he had ownership in. And I was asking him, I'm like, what's the best grass carcasses that you see come in here? And I thought I had some pretty good ones. And I still think I did. And he said, the best ones I've seen are Murray Grey. And then, come to find out later on, he has a partner that has quite a few of them. And I mean, like 100 of them. And in a commercial outfit. And so Wade McCluskey is his name. And Wade and I have got to be good friends. And so Wade really turned me on to the Murray Greys, and he's crossing those Murray Greys with our Red Angus bulls. And you talk about an animal that can really finish on grass. I'll put them against anything. I mean, they're taking every one of them steers, and I think they finished some of them in the feedlot, and the ones that in the feedlot, I mean, they're like the next thing down from a Wagyu. They are tremendous marbling. But the ones that they finish on grass are just remarkable. The ribeyes on them. And so I hope I didn't misspeak for them, but I've watched what they've done from afar, and those cattle have amazed me. They really, if you painted them red or black, you would think they're an Angus. They're an old school Angus. They're a real moderate cow, just deep bodied. And so, we saw them, we like them. And just like we like our Reds, we like some of the South Poles we see, and we like some of the Beef Masters. And there's some other breeds out there that we've liked. We found cattle that we like, we just couldn't get them bought. And, I'd buy into anything. If they're the right, if I find them and I think they'll work in our program, I'll buy them, because, like I said, we think there's good ones in every breed,
Now, talked a little bit about breeds there, and we've talked about being 100% forage as much as possible. What's that look like on your ranches, on managing your cows day to day?
Yeah, so we're blessed with an abundance of variety in our program. We've got introduced forages like Bermuda grass, Bahia grass. We've even got a little bit of fescue, but we've also got quite a bit of native country, a big blue stem, little blue stem Indian grass. We've got some buffalo, but we're blessed with quite a bit of diversity. And so, generally speaking, we're going to be grazing, warm season green grass, and then we're going to graze in the fall of the year, winter of the year, we're going to graze a lot of stockpile. Even Bermuda grass, we'll graze, stockpile Bermuda grass until the first of the year at least. And in our Bermuda grass, we overseed it using a no-till drill, because we believe in a green growing root year round. So anytime we get ground that's mostly introduced grasses, or what, or some people call it improved, we like to overseed those with something green, because we think that not having some green root in it is unhealthy for the soil. And also, Bermuda grass needs a lot of fertilizer and weed spray and stuff. And what we found is by overseeding those, you take care of a lot of those issues naturally. And so we overseed a lot of different cool season annuals. And generally those go to, like growing calves, bulls, stuff like that. But that's going to be more of a springtime deal. We're going to start really grazing those in probably late February, early March, because we don't fertilize a lot. If we do fertilize, it'll be in the fall to get them kind of started. But generally we like to graze those in more of a natural system without fertilizers. And if we do use fertilizers with the thought to grow more forage, to then put more manure, organic matter back on that soil and to improve the soil, sometimes we'll just plant a pretty poor area and fertilize a little bit just to get something to grow there. And then we kind of kickstart that process, kind of like one step back, two steps forward. And so, but we do that to increase our stocking rate per acre, and really just to keep those cattle, grazing some, a variety of forages. But they're not grazing like lush, dark green forages until maybe late April. And also the other thing, we do have some pretty good cool season perennials. And so depending on the ranch that we're on, like our if a spring calving cow on some of our ranches, a spring calving cow, they'll just be on stockpile until some of those cool season perennials come on. And then, they never need any kind of supplemental hay or anything. Our fall calving cows will generally be the ones that we eventually will put on some annuals, maybe usually about February. Up to that, they're grazing stockpile, which is pretty tough on a wet cow. But we like them to go ahead and go through that dip, and then we get them on some annuals. And if we don't have annuals at that point, then we'll supplement them with some hay, just because they're fall calving cows and they got to have good forage. But generally what that looks like is that'll be unrolling like alfalfa out in stockpile, just to make them eat. Like in February, to eat whatever's left out there, we might unroll alfalfa 3 days a week for them. But generally that's a 30-day window tops, maybe 45 in a drought. Like last year, I think we did 45 days, and that was the longest we've done it. And so it's for a very short window. And we have a lot of seed stock cattle, but we also have commercial cattle, and we run these cattle, like commercial operators. That's one thing I tell anybody that's buying bulls. If the guy you're buying bulls from is not running cows at a cow cost similar to what you're running at, you need to find somebody different. Like our cow cost is under $500, $500 a cow a year, and we're operating on 100% lease ground, and that includes our own labor. That's everything: interest, labor, depreciation. A lot of those things that a lot of people don't want to include that'll really eat you out of house and home, but that's something I encourage everybody to do. Some of these seed stock operations out there, man, if people really knew what their annual cow cost was, they would not buy bulls from, and because we were one of those people, we made that mistake decades ago.
Do you have a preferred cool season mix that you overseed with?
In our part of the world, I like things that reseed themselves. My thought is that one of these days, and we're already seeing it in some of our areas, I want to get to where we don't have to plant anything anymore. And so I like annuals that reseed themselves. I like perennials. If you can get some, some fescue or orchard grass or something like that started, that's great. But then Texas wintergrass down here is really good for that. But then ryegrass are a really good improved version of ryegrass that will reseed itself if you let it go to seed. Any of your clovers that reseed, we're big believers in those. So we want to have ryegrass and clovers in our mix, at least until we have enough seed in the seed bank, say year 3. Usually year 3, we might back off the ryegrass. We want those in the mix no matter what, because they will reseed themselves. And then we try to do an early season, like an oat that will grow good in the fall. Ryegrass is going to, always be more growth in the spring. So that oat kind of sets it. And then a lot of times we'll throw wheat, cereal rye, or triticale in there as well. Vetch, we want quite a few legumes. We want at least 3 to 5 pounds of legumes per acre, at least in the first couple of years we plant. I will say some of the places that we've been planting for 6-7 years, we just put kind of some cereal grains down because the ryegrass and the clovers come on. So we actually get our seed costs down around, $20, $22 an acre, because we're just planting kind of 80% of the seeding rate, because we know that in between the rows, all that stuff's going to reseed itself because we don't bale it and we let it go to seed. We don't mow it early or anything like that. And so, we don't spray the clovers. And so we want those to regenerate themselves. We just continue to put enough other seed in the seed bank to get a larger stand, with the thought being down the road, especially as we kind of, we're always looking to discover more perennial cool seasons. I honestly, and this is kind of take a turn a little bit, but I'm encouraging more and more of these academic people to really look at helping us manage for cool season forages. Everybody in the world can manage, in this part of the world, can manage for warm season forages. We can all do that. We can sit at home and that stuff grows. But I want stuff that grows whenever we normally don't have forage. Like, my emphasis on what can I do to get forage to grow and to have a green root, or it doesn't even have to grow, just stay green during the time of year that we don't have a lot of forage. And so even in our native pastures, we're starting to hit them harder than we used to, because I don't want to see, big blue stem and Indian grass so thick and so rank that we can't see some Canadian wild rye, or we can't see some Texas wintergrass, or we can't see some good buffalo grass coming on. And so that's something that we've learned. We're actually managing our warm season pastures for cool seasons. So we're actually hammering them a little bit more as far as grazing pressure, and just to get them to open up a little bit more to give us more variety. And so you can almost become too good of a forage manager on your warm seasons and hurt the dip in your cool season forages in that cool season part of the year.
Yeah, very good. And getting those legumes in really makes a huge difference. I mainly put in some cereal greens, try and get some ryegrass in, but I don't do a very big area. I try and pour boy it and broadcast some.
We do a little bit of that too. I like to pour boy stuff. I love the idea of just throwing seed out in front of the cows and let them trample it. I do that as much as I can.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can remember growing up, we didn't have much Bermuda on some land we had, and we had dairy cattle. So dairy cattle is a little bit different market. We fed them quite regularly. I shudder to think how much money we spent in feed costs growing up because we just fed them. But we'd throw some clover seed and some Bermuda seed on top of the feed in hopes that it'd go through the cow and then sprout up.
We did some of that growing up too, and it worked. We did some of that. I remember doing that with some crimson clover, and it worked. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I bet it was quite the sight seeing my brother and I and my dad out there looking at cow manure, seeing if we got clover sprouting. Now, one thing you mentioned a couple of times, 100% lease land. Tell us a little bit about the process of finding land to lease, because that always seems to be the issue. People can't find leased land, or they can find leased land. They can't find land to lease.
It's interesting because we don't look for lease land anymore. We get the phone calls, and I tell people that I really don't. I'm going to answer that the best way I know how, but we've worked on building our reputation and building relationships. This is, and a lot of us know this. If you're a listener out there, a lot of you know this, but it can't be overstated that this is a relationship business. The good thing that's in all of our favor right now is that people are really waking up to this regenerative grazing movement. People are realizing, people that may not have cattle or ranch, or maybe even people that do that are just getting kind of tired of it, or they just use it as a tax shelter. They're realizing the value from a regenerative standpoint for their ecosystem that they own. And so it's given us opportunities. There's going to be a lot of opportunity here in the next decade. I'll tell you, I really believe that the opportunity to lease land is going to increase. I also believe the opportunity to custom graze on other people's land is going to increase, because I think there's a lot of people with these high cattle prices that are maybe have gotten out or have reduced their herd. And when they get forage to grow back, there's a pretty high percentage of people that are not going to buy back in at these prices. That, and some of them are just getting over the age where they really don't want to be tied down all the time. We're seeing that more and more. And to where maybe they still want to do some daily checking of cattle, or they kind of still want to manage their place, but they really don't want to have cows 365 days of the year. And so, an operator that needs more access to land needs to really think about that. You need to be comfortable putting cattle on trucks. You need to be comfortable having cattle on different properties for just a short piece of the year. We look at it, our cattle like hay balers. We go where the grass needs harvested. And, that's kind of transition we're in currently. We're shipping cattle all over the place here in the next 10 days. And it's just getting cattle to some of our other ranches that have forage, because all of our places are under pretty severe drought right now. And it's just all about getting around, seeing where we've got forage, it's had plenty of rest, and then getting after it with some cattle. And I think if you're not in that mindset, I would encourage you to think about that a little bit, because there'll be opportunities maybe for a guy that owns a property that they just deer hunted. Maybe he doesn't want any cattle on there from August to January because they're hunting. Well, if you could get some pretty good grazing from April to June, hey, that's a great value. You're paying for a quarter of the year, and you're pretty much getting all the forage that they grew that, for 75% of the year, at least during the growing season. So, and there are probably quite a few people that look at it like that, but actually building a business model that thrives on that I think will be very advantageous going forward. Being willing to work with people that have conservation easements, that have different types of, I'd say, more ecologically minded land ownership. That's what we're kind of looking at. We're looking for people that have the same view of land that we do, that hey, we're here to protect it. We're trying to partner with those kind of guys and ladies as well that do that, because we think there's value there. We want to partner with people that want to see their land improve from an ecological standpoint. We want to help bring back quail and turkey in our part of the world, and we're doing that currently. But there's people that are that own land that are looking for somebody that, hey, grazing can actually help bring quail back. Yeah, what does that look like? But think about the percentage of grazers that know how to get quail to come back. That know how to manage grass, and it's willing to take the sacrificing that, not grazing that grass to get that short-term profit. There's some give and take there. You've got to be, landowners got to be able to work with you a little bit on price and things like that. But we're seeing more and more of that. And then just in general, there's just going to be less people leasing land. I think there's a generation that's getting out right now, and there's quite a few of us young guys that are in it. But I tell you, the cow numbers are down, and I really am skeptical if they're ever going to come back. I think we have seen, this cow herd is going to continue to diminish this year. I don't care what the numbers say. I talk to farmers and ranchers every day, and this cow herd is continually declining here in 2023. And I don't know that we're not going to have the land capacity to really think about this. We're not going to have the land capacity as a country to maintain the beef food source that we need here in this country. And think about that. And think about what kind of opportunity that brings to the guy that's still in it. And I really think for people that are, especially maybe in our age category and younger, there's some real opportunity going to be here in the next decade. And even to the point where, I'm completely against anything subsidized. I don't believe in it. But from just a lay consumer, I want my government to be paying attention and saying, hey, we don't have enough land to raise enough beef. We're going to have to start outsourcing beef. Well, that's not sustainable. So what are we going to do as a country to support these guys that are trying to do the right thing and are trying to raise beef in the right way? I don't know that we need to be supporting every beef producer, but the beef producers that are doing things the right way, we do. I think as a consumer, I'm concerned about that, just like pork or anything else. But people have talked about that forever, right? Like, we're running out of land. We're running out of land. I think we're there. I think we're at the cusp of it. And I think it's going to be really interesting in the next 5 to 10 years, like what's going to happen, because we've got low numbers. We got low numbers of people that actually want to do it, and we have low land. And so I think you're going to see some land get open back up to grazing, because there's going to be probably some curveballs thrown and some advantageous opportunities, like the carbon markets, for one. That alone could change things, when all of a sudden a guy that may have CRP and just hunts quail and pheasants all of a sudden goes, hey, we can graze a little bit of this and we can split the profit with the cattle grazer. We need to find a good regenerative cattle grazer, So I'm very optimistic in terms of grazing opportunities. Long answer for that, though. Well, I'm repeating a conversation that I've had with producers for the last 3 weeks, and because I'm hearing some things that I've never heard before, and even from people that you didn't think would ever probably get out, and they're just kind of tired. They bought back in during the last uptick in the market and got caught hanging with those real high dollar cows, and a lot of people are sitting on their hands now. This cow market's not following the calf market, and I think it's telling us something. And I think it means we're going to be some more sustainable, in this higher market.
Well, just to bring that home just a little bit or closer to me, my dad's recently talking about selling his cow herd. Now, he doesn't want to get completely out, so he's thinking maybe we should run stockers on his place and I can do my cow herd on lease land and whatever that looks like. But, we've ran beef cows. We sold out the dairy in 99. And prior to that, we had beef cows. I've had beef cows my whole life. So he's had it his whole life, and he's actually, I have to figure out math real quick, about 75. So, but he's thinking, well, maybe I should sell the cows. And it's not a labor issue for him so much, because I do the labor for him. I think it's a labor issue. But he just comes down and tells me what he thinks, and then I go do what I want to do. But I try and listen. But that's interesting, because he has brought that up lately, so I'm not quite sure what he's thinking right now.
Is it he just tired of wintering cattle? He just wants to have cattle during the growing season?
Yeah, that's part of it. Then he doesn't have to worry about it during winter. And to be honest, and he does do some. I'm not saying he doesn't do anything. But he does do some, but I take care of a lot of that. But last year, we were close on hay, and with our management, we got dry. So last winter, it was kind of tight supplies, and our cows didn't winter as good because we didn't have the stockpiled forage we normally have. And the idea of chasing hay and purchasing some is not appealing at all. I think he's just thinking if we just had some animals during the growing season on the home place, that'd be enough for him.
You ought to work out a deal where you can put your cows on him during the growing season and then use your lease places during the off season. And then you just got one set of cows to check and let him do all the work in the warm season. You can do it in the wintertime, trade it out,
I am trying. He's not quite ready to let go that much.
We've done that with some people where they kind of went the stock around. I was like, why don't I just send you cows and you run them whenever you have grass, and then I'll deal with them. In Bridget on the other side, and we'll empty a place and let it rest and send them, but that's a little bit outside the box thinking, I tell you what, anytime I can check one place instead of two, I try to figure out a way to do it. I love it when I empty a ranch. It's the best feeling in the world. Okay, no cows here to check. I can let the grass grow for a little while. I don't have to come over here, and it's a good feeling. If you go over there, you just go over there to enjoy the ranch. You don't have to necessarily do any work. We rarely get to really do that.
Yeah, just the moving of one group versus another group is great. My problem with lease lands on doing that is having pens. Of course, I can throw up some pens and do it, but
there's always resource shortages in there. I mean, it's water, it's pens, it's shade. I mean, rarely. I mean, there's been a couple of leases I've gotten to where like leases I wasn't going to take, and then I pulled up and I realized they did have everything. It's like, okay, we got to figure out a way to make this work, because they, like the problem is making it work. It's got everything it needs, and so because you rarely find that.
Now, one thing you've talked about, you've been doing this for a while now. What have been some of the biggest challenges you've came across during your journey?
Oh boy, where do we even start? I think pride is one. I would say that's probably number one with a lot of us. Even when you get confident in what you do, your pride can be a downfall. I found that if somebody preaches the same story today that they preached 10 years ago, you better be careful. Because I've changed my tune on so many things in our program just in the last 5 years. 5 years ago, I thought I kind of had some confidence in what we were doing. And now my confidence is in, my opinion is going to change. And I try to tell people that, like, hey, my opinion may change 2 years from now. This is how I feel today about this. And so I think a big thing is just getting pride out of the way and being willing to listen to other people. I think having partners is really good for that. I think having mentors is really good for that, because we all have things in our operation that we don't like talking about. And if somebody tells you they don't, they're lying to you. There's things that we don't like. There's things that we don't want that we want to improve. There's times a year we don't like having people around just because things don't look as good as we'd like for them to. I mean, if you don't have that, you're either, taking way too good care of your cattle or something, because I've witnessed that, every year I've been in this business, and all my friends that are really true to themselves will tell you the same things. Like, man, you can come around, but man, things don't look very good right now, and it's like, well, that's good. That's when I want to see them, because that means you're putting some pressure on them and you're poor boying them a little bit. But I've watched guys that were willing to adapt, that were willing to set their pride aside. And I've watched guys that they want to claim that because they've been doing it for this long, they've got it figured out. Hey, we've been breeding cattle for 40 years or 50 years or whatever. Well, that doesn't really mean anything to me. Like, how has your opinion changed over those 40 years? Like, what can you say that you do different today than you were doing 5 years ago? If they can't answer that, that means they're their own stumbling block. And so, and that at times that can be my biggest stumbling block. So I'd say that number one. Weather would have to be up there. We pretty much manage now like we're always going to be in a drought. And then if we get rain, we look for opportunities. So that, that can be tough. Just transitions. Like right now we're moving from our headquarters from one ranch to another. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of logistics. It's tiring. 10 days from now, I'm hoping that we have a little bit more peace about it, just because we're in that middle of moving. I mean, cattle are easy. It's equipment and getting guys lined out and having somebody on that side and somebody on this side. But that's a challenge. The other thing I'd say is it's just labor. The thought that, I used to have this thought that, we could, my first goal was to run 1,000 head, and we got there a long time ago, but I'm really blessed to get there. But what I realized is that, you think with economies of scale that you would make more money, but the problem is, low quality labor can really cost you a lot of money. And so now it's about increasing our number of cattle per hour of labor or per unit of labor. And I'm saying that, I'm pretty much the main labor for our operation, but we do use, like I said, day help, and we have some part-time employees. But I would love to have really good labor, because I think we could do some things, but it is a struggle. The guys that are really good are worth more than you can afford to pay them. And I've even told guys that, like, look, I'd love to have you, but I can't afford you for what you're really worth. And now that's one thing I get excited about with this cattle market. It's not about making more money. I just want the chance to be able to hire some high quality guys. I want to be able to rear back and pay the kind of money that a guy deserves to work the kind of, maybe the hours, not just the hours, because we try not to work crazy hours, but have the kind of stress that this job can put on you. Because there's a lot of guys that would love to do this for a living, and they're worth it if you can afford to pay them or partner with them or something like that. And so we're looking at some of that stuff, and that's the only way it's going to be sustainable. I've got 3 boys coming up, but I'd like to find somebody to kind of help us, in our partnership, kind of help that transition. If I was to be in a bad accident tomorrow, I don't want my partners to have to sell out. But I mean, right now that's kind of what would happen, and so at least until my boys are a little older. So I'd like to have somebody else there that could kind of bridge that gap that would be worth that, would be worth their salt, but then also we're paying them what they're worth. And so I'm hoping with maybe a more sustained market, I think a lot of other people are thinking about that too. We hope to maybe have some opportunities, because right now you have to, when the gas station down the road is paying 17, 18 bucks an hour for anybody. I mean, if you want any kind of quality, where does it even start, So
I think that's a hot topic across any industry. I work off the farm in education and finding good workers. We'd love to pay them more and keep them, but we can't pay them as much as they're worth. Sadly, we end up getting some that maybe aren't worth quite as much as we pay them, but the job market's hard right now getting employees.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, just like in your job, at some point you just need somebody to show up and be there, and you don't even care what you got to have somebody there. Like if we go on vacation, I got to have somebody around here to, so yeah, it's the same way in your job. At some point you got to have a warm body there. And I mean, a warm body is going to cost you a lot of money before they even do anything, so.
Michael, I've enjoyed the conversation thus far, but it's time for us to transition to the overgrazing section. So where we take a little bit deeper dive into some of your practice. And I think today we're going to talk a little bit more about grass genetics. If someone says, so what are grass genetics? What do you mean by that, just by saying that?
You hear that a lot. The funniest thing, you can get on Facebook and I'll see a guy post, bulls, and they'll be standing in a feedlot and say grass genetics. You can find that every day of the week nearly. But, what I really think of in grass genetics, I want to see a cow herd that's managed 100% on forage. And I want to see bulls that are raised on forage. Now, you could argue that, hey, if the cow herd's raised 100% on forage all the time, or maybe even 90-95% raised on forage, then maybe the genetics are there. But what I've found over time, that you can cover a lot of things with feed and with any kind of supplementation, even with forage supplementation. I mean, I see a lot of programs now where I drive up and go look at bulls, and they're getting haylage as much as they want all the time. Well, that's not very much pressure. And so, one, I want to see forage all the time. I want to see 100% forage if possible. There are some places maybe that's not possible. You better be careful claiming 100% forage if you're not. I see that too. I see guys claim 100% forage, 100% grass, and then they'll tell you in the next post that, hey, they give them a little bit of grain. Oh, we only give them 1% of their body weight. Well, that's only 10 pounds on a 1,000-pound yearling bull. Not much feed. But the other thing I want to see is pressure. Like when I pull up, I don't want to see cattle eating haylage out of a hay rain. What are you doing to push these cattle what's going to make them fall out of the program if you're giving them everything they need and they're standing there and just make life easy? I want to see cattle that are going out and hustling for themselves. It's like even us, like when we supplement, like if you give them any more than 10 pounds of hay, like on a mature cow, it'll make them stop and wait for you to bring them something to eat. And I never want my cattle to have what I call more of a, I guess, welfare mentality. I don't want my cattle to ever wait on me for anything. I don't want my cattle to wait on me at the gate thinking they're ready to move. I used to move big herds of cattle every day. Well, it got to be like a welfare system. They were just standing there waiting at the gate instead of, they could have been out eating until I got there. And so we quit doing that, because I want cattle that have their own mindset, their own cycle, and I don't want it to be altered by humans. And you see that a lot with some of these mid-grazing systems that and they're great, but I think that's the downfall of some of them. If those cattle are waiting on you, they are then leaning on you to help them eat that day. And so, and not telling people stop doing that, but you've got to realize that I want cattle that can make a living with. If I don't show up for a week, I want them to stay alive and to make a living. And so my goal, when we look at grass cattle in our operation, we look and go, all right, what did God make beef cattle to do? He made them to take grass and convert them to a wonderful protein source. And at one time, that was a perfect system. I believe at one time that was a perfect system. And we as humans messed that up. Now, maybe we didn't have the carcass sizes we have today. Maybe we didn't even have the type of beef cattle we have, and we definitely didn't have them here. All these cattle got imported. But my thinking and our thinking in our operation, that was a perfect system in terms of efficiency, low cost, and that's the most efficient system there is. So anything that I have to do man-made to add to that system, we lose efficiency, and we also increase error, and then we also increase cost usually. So our goal is to have cattle that can maintain as much on their own as possible. And that's different for different areas with different resources. But I want to see cattle that have pressure put on them. I want to see cattle that are raised on 100% forage. And generally that has a look that, they're more moderate cattle. They're bigger ribbed, got really good feet and legs. They're generally going to slick off on time. This is important. They're going to be able to slick off on grass. I can make any cattle slick and fat if I feed them. You give them enough protein and energy, and they will produce oil, and they will slick off. You go to a feedlot, those cattle are slick. I want to see cattle, because this is a big deal in the Red Angus breed. There are cattle that absolutely will not slick off on grass or not on time. And it's because over time, they haven't had enough pressure put on them, or they're, right now what's happening, a lot of these Canadian genetics are getting infused. And so I want to see cattle that can slick off on a true grass system. And so those are some of the things that I look for. But generally, it's not even the cow. It's the, I see beautiful pictures on the internet. It's like, okay, what kind of program is she? And if I pull up and they're just standing there at a rack eating haylage or silage or whatever, it's like, she's probably not going to work in my program. And I'm not saying that guy should quit what he's doing, but for our program and for our resources and how hard we are on cattle, probably not going to work, or I better be able to get them bought cheap enough that we can cull a pretty good percentage of, and try to get them down to the ones that will work.
Right. Excellent said. And through that, you answered some other questions I had that I was going to ask you. But one thing, when you talk about your grass genetics and you're raising bulls now, are you AIing? Are you looking for certain AI sires? Or are you doing all natural service with your herd? You still doing some embryos?
So that's a really good question. So we quit using AI probably 7 years ago, maybe 6, 7 years ago. With AI, what we were seeing issues. We were seeing some really good calves, and then but we weren't seeing consistency. And we were seeing consistency in our back end calves from our cover bulls. And we had some really good cover bulls at the time. And one day I just said, I'm done with it. I said, look, I want my best bulls to breed my best cows. And when we did that, our herd changed overnight. And we just weaned our third set of heifers, I think, that were really the result of that. I mean, where you really just go, I wouldn't trade these with any within our seed stock operation. And I think we got 80 keeper heifers out of that deal or close to it, and out of a fall set of cows. And I'm going to tell anybody, and I don't care if you're raising seed stock, I don't care what breed you are, you take the calves that work in your program and you put them back on the cows that work in your program, and there's no better way to get genetics that work in your environment. And I'm a guy that sells bulls, but I tell people all the time, buy bulls from me. At some point, you need to quit buying bulls from us. Use us for outcrossing, use us to add a little bit of something. But at some point, you need to be able to look in your program and go, I can raise a bull better than he can for my environment. Now, a lot of guys that don't have their cows right, stuff like that, you don't want to jump ahead on that, because you can sure get yourself in a bind. But if you're doing the right thing and you're putting pressure on those cattle, generally, I think you've got as good of bulls out there in your program as I probably can raise for you once you get your cow herd right. But you need to be very careful. You need to be a cow man. You need to pay attention what those calves are out of, and not just pick the biggest calf in the weaning pen. I think that's what people naturally want to do. And we don't even do that. We usually sell the biggest couple of calves in our program usually sell. It's that calf that kind of flies under the radar that we know his mother, we know his grandmother, and he is just as balanced as could be. We want the calf that is balanced and just doesn't have really a flaw, just solid. And that usually, there's trade-offs to everything in these cattle. And so a calf that just blows the doors off in terms of gain, he's probably going to offset it somewhere. Like maybe his mom's got a little bit too much milk, or maybe he's got a little bit too much growth, And so for our program, that's what we're looking for. And that's when we change that mentality. Like, we just want them all consistent, uniform. And when you come to me and you come to buy our genetics, you're buying our genetics. You're not just buying one animal. Well, I want the animal you get to breed as true as possible. And the only way to do that is for me to line breed those cattle and breed type and kind and consistency.
Michael, it's time for us to move on to our famous 4 questions. Same 4 questions we ask of all of our guests. Our very first question: what is your favorite grazing grass related book or resource?
Oh, that's a tough one. I honestly I'm gonna say Facebook. I think some of the grazing groups on Facebook are probably my favorite. Outside of reading, I think I enjoy learning from other producers, like in conversation. I would also add to that, NatGLC, the National Grazing Lands Coalition, has a a conference every 3 years, and it has been very productive. That one, and then also a grass-fed exchange as well. But the Grazing Lands Coalition, just in terms of just grazing and grazing cattle, the last two that I've been to have been pretty eye-opening from some pretty good producers and speakers.
Oh, very good. And, I don't think we've ever had Facebook listed as a grazing resource, but there is a lot of information there. And as much as I hate to admit I spend too much time there, but the good part is most of my feed is all groups that I'm part of, and I'm in that group for a reason. So
yep, that
can be a really beneficial resource. Our second question, what is your favorite tool on your farm?
Probably my no-till drill. I'm a big fan, especially I've got a Great Plains. We've got a 1206 NT, which is a true no-till with coulters, and we just bought a 3010, which is a 30-footer. Because we got a much bigger ranch with a lot more open ground. I like being able to plant stuff where there ain't anything growing, and I'm not a farmer. My dad and my granddad were farmers. I'm not. I'm a horse guy, and I'm a cow guy. I was the kid that always wanted to be on a horse and hated tractors, but I like taking that drill and not just for the cattle. They're one of the ranches that we're on right now. We brought Canadian geese back in there like nobody's business. I mean, there are so many Canadians staying on that place in the wintertime because we overseed the Bermuda grass. I mean, Bermuda grass doesn't do anything for wildlife outside of nesting and you have to stockpile it to do that. But, it may bring in some grasshoppers for the turkeys or whatever, but you can plant some cool seasons that do amazing things for all the wildlife, not just the cattle. So that's probably my favorite piece of equipment, because I'm not a big equipment fan.
Right. And I would love to have a no-till drill, maybe one of these days. Our third question, what would you tell someone just getting started?
Surround yourself with people that do this for a living, and be careful of people giving you advice that don't get their daily livelihood from this. And I don't mean that as a cut to anybody, but if people are giving you advice that don't put food on their table doing this, as long as they acknowledge that, and most people will say, hey, I do this inside or whatever, they'll tell you. But I think there's some people out there that are maybe in consulting positions or different positions that don't actually get a check from cattle and from grazing cattle. And I think there's some bad advice out there, and I've heard it and I've debunked it over and over again. Surround yourself with people that either do this full-time for a living or are humble enough to say, hey, this is what I do, but maybe you ought to try that. You have different resources. And I would say surround yourself with people that are resource-minded, and don't just say, hey, go do this, go do that. That'll ask you, hey, what are your resources? What can you use? Maybe you don't have a no-till drill. What are your options then? And not just say, hey, you need to go buy one. You need to go spend $30,000, And so you need to surround yourself with mentors and people that can, because there are hard days in this business. You know that. You need people that whenever things are going wrong, you can call and say, that'll give you some encouragement and give you some advice on how to get through that. You need those people, and you need, more than one of them. You need quite a few of them. If you can fill both hands with those kind of people, you'll probably make it. So,
excellent advice there. Surrounding yourself with like-minded people. What do they say? You're the average of your 5 closest friends. And the other thing you bring up, get advice from people who's doing this to put food on the table. I think that's wonderful advice, because we have to be careful about who we're listening to, and are they really doing what they're saying, and it's really happening. And then our last question, Michael, it's an easy one. Where can others find out more about you?
So we don't have a lot of resources. Real quick, we believe in word of mouth advertising. So we don't do a lot of advertising. We don't have a website. We do Facebook. We will talk about our bull sale and our program a little bit on Facebook. We try not to do a whole lot. We'll do a little bit more right up before sale time, just to be informative to the people that want to, see videos and stuff maybe before they come out, or get a good picture of bulls. That way we don't have to, necessarily answer tons of questions through text messaging or phone calls. But generally, Facebook is it, or I would encourage anybody. We always have an open door. We are limited on labor, so we've got to have a heads up, because it is hard. Because anytime that I take time to show you the operation, as long as I have a heads up and we schedule ahead of time, we love to do it. Sometimes when it's short notice, I'm having to choose between spending time with you and spending time with my family. And I used to be pretty quick to just give up my family, but anymore I don't. And I've had some people get upset about that. But as long as you give us plenty of heads up, we love to show our operation to you. And we don't care if it's wintertime, summertime, cattle may not look good, cattle may look good. We want to be 100% transparent. And so we encourage anybody, we don't ever shy away from showing our operation. And so feel free to reach out to us. I'll give my cell phone number out. You can provide that to anyone, and you don't have to buy anything from us. We're not about that. We're about relationships and getting to know more people. And we enjoy it. That's what makes this fun. I'm sure that's the reason that you have this podcast. It's about the people. And so for us, like I think some people, sometimes you feel pressure when you go look at a guy's operation. Well, maybe we need to buy a bull or we need to do this. No, like our bulls are going to sell, our females are going to sell. And if they don't, like I said earlier, we'll quit and go do something else. But as long as God's given us this passion and given us these opportunities, we're going to share it with others. And just as people have shared it with us, we would not be where we are today if it weren't for people doing that for us. And so we owe that. I feel like we owe that to everyone else. It's not like we just all of a sudden are just here and successful. People have blessed us with opportunities. People have blessed us with knowledge and wisdom and with relationships, people we can lean on. And so if we aren't doing that in return, then we're not paying it forward at all. And so we believe in that. And if you'll give us a heads up, we thoroughly enjoy, and we think it's a good investment, and don't feel like you have to have any money to spend to come spend time with us. We would love to show you around our operation.
That sounds wonderful. One of these days I'm going to find myself down there.
Yeah, well, you have an open door anytime. We'd love to show you the place, and you can come back and tell your viewers that, well, he's speaking truth, or maybe there's a little bit more to it,
Well, Michael, we appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Well, I appreciate you having us on, and I appreciate you believing in us enough to, lend your ear to us. And I hope that people enjoy this, and we wish you success as far as this podcast as well. And we're listening more now that you've reached out to us, and then so we look forward to hearing some of the other people that you have on up in the future.
You're listening to the Grazing Grass podcast, helping grass farmers learn from grass farmers. And every episode features a grass farmer and their operation. If you've enjoyed today's episode and want to keep the conversation going, visit our community at community.grazinggrass.com. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Grazing Grass podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube for past and future episodes. We also welcome guests to share about their own grass farming journey. So if you're interested, fill out the form on grazinggrass.com under the Be Our Guest link. Until next time, keep on grazing grass.